Designing interpretive exhibits is simply the act of combining many elements and procedures. It is simply plugging the artifacts and text into the formula for good design. There are no absolute solutions, but some are better than others. The procedure begins by selecting the location for the exhibit, whether you use a complete gallery or a single exhibit case. Look at the total picture. Will the subject matter require a large space with lots of wall surface, or could it be placed in a hallway or foyer? After accumulating a list of artifacts, documents, photographs, and other illustrative materials, you will be better equipped to make that choice of the location in your facility. However, sometimes the problem begins by having a space that needs to be filled immediately. I'm certain you can all identify with that situation. Once you have decided on the exhibit space, make a drawing of it. The easiest scale to work with is 1 inch to a foot. Sometimes this requires a large sheet of paper, but the larger size makes the job easier. Be certain to show where the windows, doors, and electrical outlets are located. Show any structural elements that may be obstacles and interfere with the design process. Note the directions of north, south, east, and west on the drawing. These will be helpful to you when you are discussing the room with other people. Next, on another sheet of paper, draw the wall elevations. Write down all the actual measurements in feet on the drawing itself. Make a light horizontal line on the walls at 5 feet 3 inches. This is the average viewing height and will assist in the locating of materials for viewing levels. Make other pertinent notes on the drawing that will assist you in the planning. Ask yourself, are there unusual features to your building that are of concern? What kind of lighting exists or can be used? Do you need to consider the daily required traffic patterns that must go through the museum? This is often a concern of smaller museums, where exhibit cases are put somewhat haphazardly sometimes. When you draw the plans, it is sometimes wise and useful to make multiple copies. Then you can make different designs and compare all of the ideas at once. Make changes and ultimately assist you in the final selection. From the drawing, a model could be built. It could be made of cardboard or foam core. Foam core is a strong material made from styrofoam, covered with a smooth white paper on both sides. It is lightweight and can be cut with a mat knife, and it is easy to glue. The model will help in designing spatial arrangements. You can even make scale model people, cases, and artifacts. Sometimes this is a rather elaborate process, but it can be useful if you're doing a large exhibit so that you know where everything will be going. These will help in developing traffic patterns and placing the cases throughout the gallery. The problem is similar for a single exhibit case. In developing a traffic pattern through the exhibition gallery, think of a bullet ricocheting through a room. Think of the visitor going from one case to another, viewing the materials and reading the labels. It is often best to organize a definite traffic flow, a definite direction, a definite entrance, and a definite exit. Allow at least 4-foot aisles through the entire space. On occasion, artistic license will allow a slightly smaller aisle. But when you do that, it should open it out immediately into a much larger space, allowing many persons to stand around. It is also a measure of safety as well. Consider the element of surprise and develop a sense of drama and theater in what you do. There's nothing more interesting than to wonder what is around the next corner, to wonder what is beyond the next wall. In this example that I'm showing you is a blueprint that's been darkened into the major spaces. These lines are where the light track exists. The dots here are where plug-ins exist in the floor. There are screw covers over them to keep the dust out. These lines indicate the curtains throughout the space. I'm going to draw in briefly an exhibit that I've just completed designing. I should say with a team of people. I didn't do it all alone. These are columns in our space. Here's the main entrance. There's a park block here. The main entrance is right here. It says main entrance. The doors open up. You walk into this space. What has been done is that this has been blocked off like so. People can walk in. There'll be a large case here. Sheetrock has been put on this section around these columns, which hides them, both sides. So in a sense, when the person walks in from the street, they can only see as far as this point right here. They cannot see what is over here. There's nothing more interesting than suspense. What is over here? They want to know, so they walk around. In this case, the gallery and the exhibit material is arranged in such a way that there's one topic over here, and one topic over here, and another here. But they all relate to one single topic. So we've decided not to have a definite traffic pattern. A person could turn to the left or to the right. In doing so, they will come around to this space. There are pylons here, which are large box-like structures about 8 feet tall, which is a very simple measurement to work with. So a person has to wander through this space like so. There's another large pylon here with exhibit cases built inside of the pylon with glass to see through here and here. People can walk in this area. And so there's a major artifact here in a case, a very important piece. Paintings will be hung on these walls. These surfaces were sheetrock that were painted. And then the people who came from this direction will be wandering around and up into here. This will have the similar arrangement, only on the reverse. This will be here, and these will be here, of this side. This is an entrance. This can be an exit. I suspect we will lose some people. Those who are not interested in this subject will come out and go out this way and down the stairs. Others will come through the entire exhibit and wander through and out. For those of you who are worried about conservation, the windows have been sheetrocked over as well. All of this has been sheetrocked. So all of the light is blocked out. In an ideal museum arrangement, there should be no natural light coming in for the conservation of the artifact, and also for the reason that you can create more dramatic lighting with the subject at hand if there's no interference from exterior light. So that's basically the idea that you want to develop with the traffic pattern. We've also made a model of a larger scale of this space, and we intend to we have little people that walk around, and we intend to create artifacts as well. Pique the curiosity of your visitor. Draw their attention and interest by not letting them see everything at once. I think we've achieved that here in this floor plan. Draw them into the entrance and make it entrancing. Make the beginning and the title board dramatic, bold, and enticing for the visitor to come in. The first approach to an exhibit should make a statement and have a strong impact on the visitor. Their visits are brief, and they should want to remember what they've seen. Museums compete for audiences just like any other form of entertainment. However, we hope that our goal, while attained through entertainment, is educational too. This title board, webfoots and bunchgrassers, has been silk-screened on tempered masonite. The bottom of the board is about 7 feet from the floor. It was in reach of the visitor and perhaps should have been hung higher, for it was often challenged by school children. Here the museum artifacts make the statement. There is an eclectic variety of objects. One startling and adorable group of artifacts are the black bears carved out of cedar. They are arranged here like a Sunday congregation. This adds a sense of whimsy and humor to the exhibit. They are totally charming and memorable. This exhibit of Captain Cook's title board is made up of plastic letters which are glued onto a board covered with blue fabric. That board is then nailed onto a board covered with copper squares. The cannon is placed on a platform that is covered with red fabric. The base forms a semicircular framework which is covered with 1 inch by 4 inch stained hemlock tongue and groove siding. The title board introduces the exhibit theme and the materials, which are used extensively throughout the installation. By the Sea, by the Sea. This exhibit is part of a series of 16 cases about the counties of the state. The letters are glued onto a formica-covered board. They are plastic letters and are shown here in their natural color, but are suitable for painting or any other number of treatments. They were adhered with white glue so they could be taken off by soaking them in water and can be used over and over again. Western American bronzes, yet another use of the plastic letters. The desired effect was to make the title board look like a bronze plaque. The letters were glued onto a masonite board. Wood molding was applied to the edges. Plaster was applied over the surface in a rough texture. The entire panel was allowed to dry and then stained and rubbed with a wax form of gold leaf. The effect is that it does look like a bronze plaque at very little expense. Bedazzled, an exhibit of beadwork, clothing, purses, etc. These letters on the glass were projected onto a mirrored surfaced mylar material that had an adhesive back. After traced, they were cut out with an X-Acto knife and applied to the glass. Paperweights rarely weighted paper. Press-on letters were put in the middle of a 19th century floral design. The small original graphic design was photographically enlarged to about 4 feet wide and wet-mounted on masonite. Robert Fulton and How Steam Works, or Oregon Steam, two titles that tell what is shown in a large gallery divided into two spaces. The topics were relative. The letters were projected onto the wall with an overhead projector. The shapes traced and then painted on the wall. Wood burners, another example of this technique, only slightly larger. These are about 8 feet tall. By doing one letter at a time, a very large size can be attained. The process is still the same. Decadence in Design was a title that was silk-screened onto the inside of the glass in order to prevent visitors from scraping off the image. The design was to give the effect of being a rubber stamp. It was placed on an angle in different locations of the 5 exhibit cases used in this installation. The bicentennial van was a van of history. It was 40 feet long, 8 feet high, and 8 feet wide, with a historical exhibit inside. It was prepared for a bank during the bicentennial year. The exterior was spray painted with lacquer. The color and title were hand painted by a professional sign painter. This was done at some expense, but if necessary and for a rather permanent situation, would be a useful way to handle the project. Gill netting on the Columbia. The letters are lettersign, which are a thin plastic letter that is pressed onto the wall. They are suitable for exterior use. They are easy to apply, as the spacing is already calculated by the backing that they come on in the package. This photographic exhibit illustrates the use of labels that blend into this color scheme. There's a light blue colored paper that matches very closely to the light blue walls. Other additional elements of interest are the use of the stylized waves, painted on the surface with latex paint, cut-out salmon out of masonite, and cut-out seagulls. The exhibit was located in the lower level of a hallway that required some livening up. The harvesting banner is part of a series of banners that indicate divisions in an agricultural museum installation. The fabric is ripstop nylon with silk-screen design and lettering. There were a variety of colors used for the banners, each having a contrasting border. Banners are also useful as a form of advertising outside of your museum. However, they do need to be constructed of waterproof material. Letraset is just one of the many companies that produce press-on letters. As we leaf through the catalog, we can see that there are a very wide variety of type styles, some of which are very simple and some are more ornate. In the labeling portion, it would seem to me you would want to use the rather simple ones for the labels and perhaps the more ornate ones, which are not as readable, for a title board or subtitle. There are also other elements in this catalog which are very useful, such as numbers, foreign words, lines, borders, design elements, stars, stripes, everything you can think of. These are very good for use around your building. There are seasonal, holidays, flags, colors, on and on. There's also visual aids such as papers that is adhered, shading films for doing graphic layouts. There are inks, felt pens, and the Pantone color products by Letraset are extremely useful. As you can see, all these things, I'll show you an example soon, and all of these things are combined together to have complete color coordination. The PMS system, or the Pantone matching system here, as you can see all of the colors that are available. This is a very useful reference just to get excited about color, if for no other reason. Let us spend a couple of minutes discussing color and the use of color. First of all, don't be afraid to use it. Color is an emotional element. It can be exciting, depressing, warm, cold, cheerful and romantic, to name a few. It can enrich the story you are telling, and it can make the artifacts stand out. With dark artifacts, use a light background. With light artifacts, use a dark background. Keep the number of colors used in an exhibit to just a few, or only a couple if possible. If you use a variety of tones and hues to make a statement, more colors, of course, would be required. Consider the seasonal use of color as well. If your building is particularly cold in the summer, you might use cooler colors such as blue or green. If your building is cold in the winter, you might use warm colors like red, orange, or brown. Color has a definite effect on people. Rely on it and use it accordingly. This is an example from the series of 16 cases that I showed you previously. It is an entirely different treatment, however. One side of the cases are one progression of shades, and the other side is a series of another shade. The color here is achieved through the use of Pantone paper, which I just showed you. The paper comes in large sheets and was mounted on foam core with photo mount spray. Formica, or plastic laminate, it's commonly used in bathrooms and kitchens, and there are many colors produced all the time, and textures. I prefer using just the colors because I feel if you can use wood, you should use real wood. Sometimes you'll find that the real products are much cheaper than the ones that are created to look like something else. It is a good means of achieving color. In this slide, it shows the case interior. It was glued with contact cement to a 3/4 inch plywood shell. Formica can be scratched and is not easily repaired. Pictures, labels, and other materials can be adhered to it with double stick tape, florist putty, or silicone sealer. These adhesives have solvents and can be removed. Holes made by nails or screws are not readily covered. This exhibit of farm tools is a case that is permanently lined with a linen-type fabric. Fabrics are a good use of color to introduce color in an exhibit. In this instance, we put color on a panel, a painted panel with latex paint. The panel is 3/8 inch tempered masonite or hardboard that has a smooth surface. The colors selected for the exhibit were those used originally on an artifact exhibited. The board was lightly sanded before painting. The border was screened off with masking tape. The green portion was painted with latex paint with the use of a 4-inch roller. A roller will leave what is called an orange peel texture. A brush leaves the striated texture. When the paint was dry, the masking tape was removed and a fine bristle brush was used to paint the red border. A pinstripe was applied around the green portion with a black felt pen after the paint had dried. The yellow design on the side was adapted from the same implement from which the colors were selected. Many galleries often use latex paint to color the walls. It is easily cleaned with water when still wet. It is more difficult to clean after it has dried. It should be allowed to dry at least 3 days, and longer if is preferred. The range of colors available are limitless. You should get a paint book from your local paint store so that you, like the Pantone papers, can at least consult these colors so that you might make a choice in your exhibitions. Out of all these brilliant colors, I'm not certain why so many exhibits are done in tan and off-white. This exhibit pedestal is for an exhibit of Thonay furniture. It is a 4-foot by 8-foot panel of chipboard that was painted with latex paint. The board was set off the floor with 3 4-inch by 4-inch pieces of wood painted flat black. The large panel was used to keep the artifacts out of reach of the public. The white color was selected to set off the linear qualities of the furniture and give an intimidating effect. However, the exhibit materials were still touched, but we felt that they were touched much less than might have been in a normal installation. The panels did require daily touch-up. As a brief aside, let me mention that neat, well-maintained exhibits are one of the best deterrents to vandalism. Few people would violate these lily-white surfaces. Exhibits need to be checked daily for cleanliness. Lights should be replaced immediately when needed. Plants should be watered and kept fresh. Audio-visual mechanisms should be fixed or removed when broken. An exhibit is a place where a visitor often judges the institution. This is the place to put your best foot forward. Remember, you only have one opportunity to make a great first impression. Another use of latex paint that was on this mural I'm showing you was used to paint the walls and the mural as well. The mural was adapted from a film clip of The Big Trail starring John Wayne. This particular scene was selected for its illustration of taking off for the Oregon Trail from Independence, Missouri. A high contrast negative was projected on the wall and traced. A few colors were selected for the project. Letters designating each color were noted in the proper space. Then the mural was painted just like a giant paint-by-number. The whole job took 2 people nearly 20 hours. The subject matter was suitable for 2 consecutive exhibits. Diagrams like how does steam work can also be produced in the same manner. Letter could have been used here to speed up the labeling process. Instead, each letter was painted on by hand. Lacquer is more difficult to use. It should be sprayed for best results. Cleanup requires lacquer thinner, which requires a space that has good air circulation or an exhaust fan. When trying to achieve a perfectly smooth surface, it is the best paint. This map was created with Letraset materials: Pantone shading, Pantone Letraline, and the letters themselves. The panel itself is an 1/8-inch tempered masonite lacquered white. It took about 4 coats of paint to cover it thoroughly. Arranging all of the elements for an exhibit is probably the most difficult task. Organizing the colors, textures, artifacts, and labels into one cohesive unit requires considerable practice. When designing exhibits, consider asymmetry over symmetry, avoid pairs, consider diagonals over vertical and horizontal lines, strive for unity through variety. Experiment with design. There is no one perfect solution or one perfect design. Put up an experimental design. Talk to your patrons. What do they think? Why do they feel that way? How do they react to certain elements? What exhibits would they like to see? Maintain a thematic and appropriate use of materials. Use fabrics that lend themselves to the artifacts. For instance, don't use velvet with farm equipment or heavy burlap with fine porcelains. Try to achieve units or groupings of the exhibit elements. In large spaces, these need to be well arranged. It is better to have 3 small groupings than 1 large assemblage. Give your viewer a chance to rest and digest the material. Consider the design of a newspaper article. Paragraphs are often broken up to relieve the eye. Journalists know that a person would simply turn the page if they were faced with a page of solid type. They divide the text into smaller units and allow plenty of white space. You should not expect someone to really enjoy an entire, relentless wall of informative material. This is a slide of a logging photographic exhibit. The walls here are masked with photographs and labels, but is relieved by the thematic use of logs and log rounds nailed to the wall. A case of objects includes a variety of shapes and sizes of the artifacts. Put artifacts on small platforms or risers. This will give them importance and add interest. These 3 cases are a jumble of materials, but they are unified by a thematic device, namely the large red, white, and blue stars. Clutter can be an effect you may wish to achieve. The star adds to the unity of the mass of objects. While this looks like a case full of boxed photographs, they are all mounted on different colored Formica-covered boxes. From the side, a variety of colors can be seen, and a colorful sense of dimension is created out of materials which are so often presented flat. The Buckaroo title certainly does grab you, and a Western theme illustrating the use of interpretive materials presented in a well-spaced arrangement. We are intrigued by the chair of welded horseshoes and other welded objects which are shown and illustrated in the enlarged photograph in the back. The platform was used to hold artifacts, protect them, and also to require the visitor to wander from space to space, from theme to theme. Here's a dress in a rather elegant arrangement that illustrates the use of a dress form. Mannequins and techniques to hold clothing are areas requiring some attention. When mannequins are used, visitors, often especially children, spend more time analyzing the face and features of the mannequin than learning information about the costume. I believe mannequins, as we know them in department stores, should be avoided. It is sometimes difficult to get clothing on them anyway. If care is not taken, valuable textiles could be damaged. Two alternatives to mannequins include this kind of dress form and a simple-shaped plexiglass hanger padded where the fabric touches the plexiglass. This trapper inside of a building in a fort is another example of mannequins. His face is directed away from the viewer. This will not interest viewers to spend time trying to decide how his face looks. There are no features on the face. It is simply painted with a flat white latex. You could paint other mannequins, if you must use them, with suitable shade appropriate to the costume. These two women, dressed in their 40s clothing, are rather startling and somewhat humorous. It is an alternative to exhibit artifact clothing on mannequins. These enlarged photographs were taken from a 1940s Janssen catalog and enlarged life size. The photos were wet mounted on 3/8" masonite and cut out of a jigsaw. The edges were sanded and painted with black latex paint. Photographs can be sepia, as these two shown with the train and the loggers, rather a humorous photograph, which means sepia is a kind of brown toning, which is done with ammonia, dyed with other colors, or hand-tinted with felt pens. They can be cut into squares, rectangles, circles, or any other shape for that matter, but this all must be done judiciously so as to avoid the overuse of trite or cute shapes. Photographs can be mounted with photo mount spray, dry-mounted or wet-mounted. Wet-mounted photos can be hung like pictures, put up with nails, or if small, attached to smooth surfaces with double-stick tape. Photographs describe and illustrate. They can be a vital element in an interpretive exhibit. They are one part of the formula. Combining all available elements to create a good exhibit takes considerable practice. However, the most important element of all is the attention to detail. Giving that extra effort to be sure that the design, materials, and labeling are neat, clean, and precise lead to good exhibits. Be certain that all visible surfaces are well painted, that there are no drips of paint or dirt. The labels are well mounted and trimmed. The glass is clean and kept that way. Be sure the exhibit seen by the visitor a year after it was created looks as good as the day it was finished. Give attention to every detail, and the final appearance will be rewarding.